Hello, Internet. I'm going to be talking about two of the most powerful men in the world today, Barack Obama and Mango Thunderslice. Yes, a viewer asked a question of me in the last video. How did I become to open my eyes and become awake to the world around me and see through the lies and illusions? And I thought that was a good question, and instead of reply with a wall of text, I would just make a new video. And, you know, it's a fitting day. It's Thursday, the last full day of Barack Obama's presidency, 8 long years. And so I'm also going to reference how Barack Obama helped along my path of enlightenment and how I became an anarchist. So I guess I'll start from the beginning. I was born a poor black man. No, that's right. I was born a poor ginger. Actually, I wasn't poor, but I was a ginger. And basically, learning has always come very easy to me. I knew my alphabet at 18 months, and the spoken and written word I immediately grasped onto as a kid as this is what the world is made out of. It's made out of language. I saw how my parents and other adults would use language in certain manners and they'd get what they wanted. And, basically, I also saw a lot of fights when I was a kid, between my parents. And so I saw the power of language, both positive and negative. And so I guess that's kind of what I latched onto as a kid, is language. And if I was gonna become as powerful as I thought myself to be as a young wee lad, I would have to master language first of all. And so, as a kid, I was just learning everything, trains, planes, boats, I was just learning everything. I was obsessive about learning everything about everything that could be learned about. And, a lot of the classes that I was taking as a kid were gifted and talented because, to be perfectly honest, when I was in a regular classroom, I just felt like I was surrounded by a bunch of idiots. And to tell the truth, that's how I felt for most of my life, more often than not, up until I graduated college. And, so I was in accelerated classes and just, going as fast as I wanted to. And that suited me. I don't like to be held back. I don't like to lower myself to the lowest common denominator, which is exactly what public schooling does to everyone who is enrolled in it. And, so yeah, basically, it was nice early on because I was just learning, and the school system, was mostly encouraging that I was in, until it came to a point where my obsession with learning everything around me came to a point where all of a sudden the school system, and this was about in high school, the school system stopped cheering me on. It stopped with the incentives to keep on learning as fast as possible, and it started actually holding me back. And there were certain teachers and certain administrators of the school that I realized they didn't want the students to be as smart as possible. They wanted them to be within a certain range of controllable smartness. Because at a certain point, intelligence does lead to rebellion. It leads to rebellion in this system because eventually that intelligent human being realizes that there is a control mechanism, that this society does not want critical thinkers. It does not want independent thinkers. It wants people to run the machines. It wants people who are compliant to orders that are given to them. And so, yeah, basically, these were the Bush years too when I was in high school, and 9/11 happened, and that was just such a formative influence, just like, what the hell is happening? Nobody has any sufficient explanation. Nobody knows what's going on. The president goes on there, President Bush, and he's like, Osama bin Laden, he did it. And they're like, okay, Osama bin Laden. And then I remember, this actually wasn't in high school. This was in middle school. And I remember not knowing the difference between Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. And that was exactly what the mainstream propaganda was intended to bring about, was they didn't want people to know the difference between Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. They wanted them to be exactly, for the purpose of starting the war, they wanted people to be confused. They wanted them to think they were identical, or at least on the same team. But then I remember that the weapons of mass destruction were never found, and I started to really question what was going on. And my parents were kind of hippies when they were younger, and I, liked a lot of the music that they played from that era, and, just kind of settled into an anti-war stance. It seemed appropriate. I don't see any legitimate reason why a person would cheer on any war, especially not the war in Iraq under President Bush Jr., and so, it basically, that's kind of where my political rebellion came into being, was during the Bush years, and I became a rabid liberal, anti-war liberal, basically just raging against the machine. And so I kind of, during that time, I was raised to kind of believe that being on the blue team, being liberal, was equivalent to being anti-war. And, throughout American history, a lot of people have thought that, although these days now it's the blue team that's cheering on nuclear war against Russia. How times have changed, eh? But yeah, so basically, and then I remember it was coming to a crescendo. I was in college by the time Bush's term was up, and, people were almost on the verge of revolution. People were finding out about the 9/11 conspiracy and how the official story was just a pile of garbage that made no sense whatsoever. And people were learning about the banks, the Federal Reserve, and, I just remember watching all these conspiracy videos and just like it was opening my mind. And other people, they'd react violently to it, like, no, that's a bunch of BS. Or there were most people, they just ignored it. They didn't possess the mental capacity to digest that information, and so they just ignored it. Or they said, ooh, that's kind of scary, creepy, and then, just kept on doing whatever they're doing. And then came Obama. And I remember when Obama was elected, I was at UC Santa Barbara here on the left coast. And man, when the West Coast lit up blue, I don't know what time it was, 8 or 9 o'clock, and just people, just the whole neighborhood, the whole place just started screaming and hooting and hollering. People were out in the street just celebrating, parading, and that was wild. And it was just interesting because I remember at that point I had been talking with some other people in college who were kind of revolutionary minded like myself. And, it was interesting because then I talked to him like 2 days after Barack Obama was elected, and all of a sudden these revolutionaries were like, I don't believe any of that conspiracy stuff anymore. I'm attached to the government. I have a stake in the government's future. And I was just like, wow! Like, the election of a black man just castrated the revolutionary spirit of America. That is interesting. And so they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize, and, it was like, wow, Obama's going to change the world, everything's going to be great, the banks are going to get reined in, we're going to end the wars, they're going to close Guantanamo. Oh, Billy, those were the days. And, of course, all of those promises were lies, all of them completely lies. Barack Obama expanded the wars. He was the bankers' best friends. He basically gave them all a guarantee of criminal immunity, which is, back in the medieval days, the only one who had criminal immunity was the fucking king, all right, was the royal class. And now the bankers have the same legal status as the kings of old. And so it didn't take me very long to realize that Obama was a fraud, and that, he was not going to follow through on any of his promises. But unfortunately, my millennial brethren on the blue team basically just they bought it hook, line, and sinker, and they didn't realize that he was a fraud. They kept on believing. Don't stop believing in Obama. That's what they were like, and it's just kind of, I started to really look into anarchism. And, I was kind of entertaining socialist delusions before I went to the point of reading the Communist Manifesto, because, unlike most socialists, I figured if I'm going to believe in something, I better actually understand it and, be able to defend the tenets of it. So I was a communist at one point, but then it came to the point where I realized that the ultimate revolution, the ultimate rebellion is not against capitalism, it's not against money per se, it's against the structure of control, and the structure of control is the government, and it's the government merged with the banks, all right? Capitalism is just an exchange of money. I started, learning more about economics, and it was really Ron Paul in 2012 that really brought it to the forefront. And even in 2008, I voted for Ron Paul in the primary. So from 2008 to 2012, I started to realize that socialism was total bullshit. I became a total anarchist and anarcho-capitalist and realized that, people exchanging money for value, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a voluntary exchange. That's all good. And it's really just coercion. It's when people are forced to do something that they don't want to do. That's bad, okay? That's called wrong, morally wrong. And that's exactly what the government is. Everything the government does is at the barrel of a gun. You don't pay taxes voluntarily. I know there's a lot of brainwashed, deluded sheep who say that they do, but try not paying your taxes and see what happens, all right? They reserve the right to kill you if you resist arrest when they come and force you to pay your taxes or hold you accountable for not paying tribute to Caesar. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That's what Jesus said, but there's actually a riddle in that statement, because everything Caesar has is stolen. None of the things Caesar has are Caesar's. So render unto Caesar what is Caesar's is not just telling people to pay taxes, it's telling people to recognize who owns what and what the proper relationship to a person's labor and the product of their labor is to their own self and their own soul. So yeah, basically, it was also kind of a spiritual revolution for me. And in my mind, you really can't separate the mental revolution from the spiritual revolution and also from the physical revolution. It's all tied together. There's people that think they can just learn all of the conspiracies and read all the books and watch all the videos, and that makes them free. That's a start, but it's not the whole game. You got to actually act on that knowledge. You must make yourself free. You must see the truth and know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, but only if you get your ass off the couch and start talking to people and doing things and building your life. So that's it. Basically, it was seeing the full spectrum tyranny of the American imperial state, from the 8 years under neocon Bush to the 8 years under neoliberal Obama, and just realizing that the wars never stopped. Bush destroyed Iraq and Afghanistan, and Obama destroyed Libya and Syria and Yemen, and was droning Pakistan, and destroyed Iraq all over again, started ISIS. And so it's just like, everybody who's been paying attention during this internet era has been waking up, and the millennial generation is kind of, at least my generation specifically, is right in between worlds. The people who were older than me, they weren't really into computers. They were kind of, but it was kind of like they were into computer games, but they didn't really get what the internet really was and the true power of the internet. And they were still more kind of socially oriented here in the physical world. And then all the generations after mine, basically, they are just totally inundated in the internet. They've got like super fast internet on this tiny device in their pocket. They don't remember dial-up. They don't remember. So basically, I was born free, and I managed through constant mental struggle to stay free throughout school. I resisted the propaganda. I could name a dozen different extremely prominent instances throughout all of my levels of schooling where the teachers and the educators tried to basically put propaganda into the schooling system, and I called it out, and they rebuked me for it. But it helped me learn that this isn't just some idle thing that we're living in. There's actually agendas, hidden agendas, and that there are very powerful people in the world that do not want us to know how powerful they are or why they're powerful, or, more importantly, that they are powerful because we are their slaves. Back in the day, it was physical slavery, like you gonna get whipped if you don't pick the cotton. But now it's basically you have to work for paper currency that has no intrinsic value, and it's constantly losing value. All of us are just hamsters on a cage, hamsters on a hamster wheel, just running, but not going anywhere. And meanwhile, the people who create the money have the power of seigniorage, which means that they have first access to newly created money out of thin air. And so, you really can't understand history until you look at it through the lens of money and energy, all right? So, I had my whole mental revolution, and I have a plan to basically create a resource structure for an independent, decentralized society, basically revolving around renewably sourced fuels and chemicals from biomass from the plants. The power's in the plants. That's what I know. If there's one thing I know, it's that the power is in the plants. The plants are emissaries of God on this planet, and we are here to they are our allies, and we can achieve anything through the power of the plants. And I have dedicated my life to proving that point in 1,000 different ways. And basically Obama and Bush, the fraudulent imperial state, helped me to realize that the only way out is in. We must become sovereign inside ourselves if we are ever to have a semblance of freedom outside ourselves. As long as someone has convinced you that you are a slave, you are a slave. Frederick Douglass, the old slave back in the 1800s, all right? He was a slave until he secretly taught himself how to read. And once he learned to read, he started understanding that the slave master had no actual intrinsic greater standing than he did, that he was equal to the slave master, and it was only because he was formerly ignorant and illiterate that the slave master had any power over him whatsoever. And that is really the aspect of what we're looking at. We are illiterate, all right? Well, being able to identify the words on a page does not make you literate, okay? There are plenty of people that can identify words on a page, but, when it comes to, here, read this essay, read this book, and tell me what you think. What does this book mean? People have no comprehension of meaning. They have no critical thinking skills. They know enough to read the manual to make the machine run, but they don't understand how to think critically about what they're accepting through their eyes, through text and through TV. And so, that's basically it. I was fortunate to have parents who didn't really indoctrinate me too much. My dad was a devil's advocate all the time. He never really told me what to think. He would always just ask me critical questions about what I was thinking. And, he taught me one thing that is very important and I use every day of my life, which is the more that you want to get fired up and mad and start raising your voice and talking faster, that is precisely the point when it is important to lower your voice, to speak more slowly, and to say exactly what you mean in calm and collected speech. And that is how you can you don't have to convince every person in the world that you're right. That doesn't matter at all. But if you want to create change in the world, you got to realize that you don't have to, it's not just defeating your opponent that matters. If you defeat your opponent but you look like an idiot in the process, the crowd is what matters, all right? The man in the arena, he knows that you don't just have to beat your opponent, you have to win the crowd. Okay, so what's important in any argument or any, discussion or conversation is not to get angry, not to get hostile, not to get abrasive or pointed, but just to keep your cool and basically not just speak the truth, but live the truth. And people will see that. And when they see the truth and they're not afraid of it, they'll instinctively come closer to it and they'll start adopting it. And so that's my modus operandi in life right now. Live the truth, don't just speak it, I don't really give a shit if you, call yourself an anarchist today, but I want you to understand why I call myself an anarchist, and I want you to understand why that's integral to my happiness. And, eventually what I'd like, ideally, is that, for those people that would also like to be happy, I would like them to realize internally inside themselves that they are sovereign, that you are sovereign, and that no one has the authority or the ability to govern your life as effectively as you can. And same goes for me. I know my life better than anyone, and there's nobody who can tell me that they know me better than me. All right, there's some who might presume, but they'd be wrong. Space Panther, she might know me better than me. Not really, but she knows me better than anybody else. And so that's really the point, is that basically know yourself and temet noske, know thyself, because it's not just a huge universe out there that we're experiencing. There's a whole universe inside. There's trillions of organisms all inside the human body. And it's when we start to recognize that we are master of the inner universe, we will also become master of the outer universe. And so that's it. The anarchy of the cosmos. All right, Jesus was an anarchist. He was executed by his government for rebelling against the religious and political structures of the day. And in truth, all great minds throughout history share that aspect of rebelling against the lies and the falsehoods of the world that beset them. And so that's what's up. I don't know if that actually answered the question, but I feel like that's a worthwhile answer at least. So yeah, last day of Barack Obama's presidency, worst president ever, because, you know, at least with Bush, people knew that there was tyranny going on and they resisted it. With Obama, it's just been rainbows and snowflakes. But luckily, the jig is up, the game is up, and now Mr. Donald Trump's going to take over the reins, and we're going to do some real nice, fun things. So cheers to you all. Hope you have a wonderful day.